Today we are going to be talking about line work. So I have a stencil printed over here with 4 separate lines and a couple circles. The reason being is lines and circles are one of the hardest things to nail. Let's start with your fake skin. What I normally like to start with is a little alcohol swab. A lot of the times your fake skin will come with a little bit of a residue on there. So just go ahead and kind of wash that off. I personally just use some alcohol wipes. You can use regular isopropyl alcohol and then wipe that off using your towel. I personally just like these because they're so convenient to have. Putting our ink into our ink cap. What we want to make sure of is making sure that we are not actually touching that cap at all. You don't want to, because when you are doing this for actual clients, if you touch that, that is a cross-contamination issue. Next, we're going to be looking at our stencil stuff. This is the stencil stuff that I prefer the most. I like this guy just because it tends to take a lot of the ink. So I'll always squirt a little bit just right on that corner. With stencil stuff, the biggest trick is going to be a nice even layer throughout and nothing too thick. If you do go too thick, what happens with that is it's not going to stick right away. While I'm waiting for that to get tacky, I'm going to be taking a 7-round liner and using my mass machine today. Normally, you're always going to want to be wrapping your machine. When you're practicing, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to have any cross-contamination issues. Loading that into your cartridge. Today we're going to be working at a 8-volt. The reason being is our fake skin is not going to be exactly like real skin. It's actually going to be a little bit harder for the skin to take it. So you are going to want to run it a little bit higher just to get more pokes into that fake skin. So you do want to be more careful when we are working off of real skin to be more delicate. Now that you're more tacky here, let's lay down that stencil. We've applied a little bit of that balm onto our hands, so we're just going to go ahead and apply a light layer onto our first line. One of the biggest tips is going to be tapering in and out. The way that you want to think about this is actually going to be an airplane taking off and landing. So when we have our tattoo machine on, you see that tip, you're actually going to glide with that tip in a pendulum-like motion, that airplane taking off and landing. Right now we're sitting at about an 8 volts. The reason being is because we are working on fake skin. It's harder to get the ink into a fake skin. It is a little bit thicker as well, so we want to remember that, especially when going on to real skin, we want to be much more delicate. You can see with your needle as well, right here the tip has a slight cut. That's the angle that you're going to want to be pulling your line in. The reason being is it's going to be the most supportive for the needle going into the skin. So I'm actually going to rotate that towards me. You can push or pull with your lines, and what I mean with that is you can be pushing this way or you can be pulling towards yourself. I personally like to pull towards myself. Starting with that first line, we're gonna have our hand at a 3-point stretch with our finger up here, thumb down there, and normally with our regular skin, we're gonna be pulling outward and then pull with your needle. What I mean is that bottom of the fist will actually be pulling the skin this way. Now, since we are working off face skin, we aren't gonna worry too much about that, but I do want you to get in the habit of holding your hands in that position, so that way when it does come time to tattoo on real skin, you've already got the motion down. I do like to put a little bit of a cloth right here and let that sit on top of the other stencils. Now tapering in and out, going right into the skin and pulling out. When you're ready to pull out, we're gonna glide out. Tap your line, we'll get some nice saturation. Now, when you're stopping partway through that line, you're actually going to still use that taper in and out method, but we're not gonna be starting right at that line. We're actually gonna be starting a little further back where we started to taper out and start to taper in right in there and then pull back out. just like that. Some people use a couple different methods. I personally like to slightly sketch at first, get my hand motion in, and then pull all the way through our line there. So let's finish out that line with that baby sketch, tapering in and out. Going through and cleaning that line off, you'll start to see that we have a nice solid line throughout. Now moving on to our second line, we're going to be doing the same thing, but we're going to actually be pushing the needle away from us just to show you what that looks like, but just also being cautious and remembering to use that tip and have that still in the same angle. When we're pulling a line, you can be anywhere from a 90-degree angle to 60 degrees. So now again, practicing and having that cloth right here, holding that skin for its stretch, and we're actually going to be pushing the line. Gliding in and out, that taper in and out method, always keep that in mind. Now that we've gone through this first line, pulled it towards us, The other thing that I like to do in order to make sure that you're not going over the skin and damaging it too many times, we never want to go over the skin more than 4 times. I try to do 3 and less depending on the skin type. With here, I've already gotten 1 full pull this way, sketching it in, tapering in and out as I go. Now I'm going to be pushing backwards. Hitting the skin away from me is going to get a whole different angle, and it will really saturate that line much better for me versus going back over in the same direction. So let's go ahead and push away from us this time. Now when pulling your lines, always making sure that you are checking your stretch on the skin, how you are pulling that machine, what angle the machine is at, and then also your body posture, making sure that your arms are stable, you have enough support, and then also your machine is going to be supportive as well. You can even use your pinky to kind of hold and support, or pull right at that cartridge and hold, especially when learning depth at first. This is a really easy way to help you. Now that we look at our lines, they're nice and saturated. That's 2 passes and under, really just kind of sketching it into the skin. Another method that people really do like, it really just depends on artist preferences, is literally just kind of sketching it along. Definitely depending on the thicker the line, the easier this will be. So what does that really look like, right? We're still gonna have that 3-point stretch. I'm gonna be going in at my angle, more to 90 degrees, and kind of just sketching that along. Still using that taper in and out, pendulum motion. And sketching along that line. Now dotting that ink off is going to help it stay saturated. You're not going to pull that stencil right away, but you can see right away how much lighter that line is. You can go through and go ahead and sketch it and then pull 1 pass through. That is also something that I normally use when I have somebody with more sensitive skin. So let's just go ahead and sketch the rest of that in. Okay, now that we have that sketched in, I'm going to be actually pulling away with me just to saturate that line. Now that we finished our lines over here, we're gonna start on our circles. So biggest thing with circles is a lot of people, it's really hard for them to make their way around the edge, connect it, make sure it's nice and seamless. One of those tricks is gonna be moving your body positioning, right? So if you can make that high turn, then adjusting your body as needed. When working on a fake skin, it's easy because we can actually just pick up and adjust that fake skin. Now, when working on somebody, you can't exactly just do that. So just really making sure that you're comfortable with your body positioning as you are tattooing at that 60-degree angle and adjusting as needed. Also being cautious of where that needle is and which angle it is cut at, and then going from there. Tapering in and tapering out. Making sure your body feels supported, but also still holding that 3-point stretch. And let's say we're gonna pull at this angle. Now this would be the point where I've made my curve around, almost like that half moon. For this demonstration, I'm going to pick up and move and continue, but this is normally when I would adjust my body. Tapering in, tapering out. If I want to start a little further, I can. One thing I like to do, especially if you feel like you're losing your stencil, just adding little dots, baby dots in there just to help keep that stencil if it does wipe off. So you can see exactly which points you're trying to hit. Tapering in and out. Making sure my hand speed is matching my voltage. Now let's say it didn't get saturated, so I'm going to go back over that line, but pulling in the opposite direction. So instead of pulling away, I'm actually going to be pulling towards myself. There we go. And continue until the circle is finished. Remembering to practice that 3-point stretch. I'm doing the same with our smaller circle.